Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. This is Tracy Zimmerman. I'm the Executive Director of the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation. Just to be sure that I know folks can hear because everybody is on mute at the moment, if somebody would take a moment or all of you to write in the chat box to me that you can hear us, that would be very helpful. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Just as a heads up, we are recording the webinar today. So you will be able to watch it later and share it with others if need be. I want to go over a few housekeeping items as we get started. The first is that everyone is on mute at the moment, just to make it easier for folks to hear without significant feedback. And if there are any audio or technical problems that arise as we're doing this, if you can just type those in the questions, we'll do our best to address them. So those are our few housekeeping items. I also do want to mention that in addition to me, Mandy Bleidinger is also sitting here with me, so you may hear her chime in as we go through the agenda for the day. So what are we going to cover? We're going to give a brief background on the Pathways to Grade Level Reading initiative. I know that many of you have been engaged with the work, have shaped the work, and played an integral part in getting to our first phase, which was the measures of success. And some of you may be newer to the initiative and what we're undertaking. And so I want to make sure that everybody feels like they have a good sense of what this is about and why we are undertaking this phase of the work. We will very briefly touch on the measures of success framework just to give a sense of, again, what it is we're focusing on. We'll spend a little bit more time then on the learning teams, the purpose and the role, and as well as the different types of supports that will be available for the learning teams, and certainly have time for questions and feedback. So there are two ways as we go through to participate. And please, as I'm talking, feel free to ask questions, and you can do that in one of two ways. One is by typing, which several of you have done and may be easiest, and the other is by raising your hand. And what that looks like on GoToMeeting, you see that little hand button there. If you want to have me unmute you so you can ask a question verbally, you can go ahead and click that button. And if you prefer to type in your question and have me or Mandy address it that way, we can do that as well. So that's how we can move forward with questions. So just as a starting point, who's behind and supporting the NC Pathways for Grade Level Reading work? It is an initiative powered by the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation in collaboration with NC Child, the North Carolina Partnership for Children, and Best NC. And one of the points I want to emphasize here, in addition to this collaborative partnership that really has been a tremendous asset, I think, to the project as we have been moving it forward, is that our key function is really about creating the space and the process so that the products, in fact, are coming from and the decisions are coming from those who are engaged, the stakeholders and the data action team and the learning teams. And that's really what the heart of this next slide emphasizes, that Pathways is about creating partnerships among the state's early learning and education, public agents. Ooh, that's not good. Hold on a second. I see what happened here. I know you're not seeing the slide. Hold on one second. Jesus. There we go. It's coming back up. I apologize. It's not good to hit the plug of the monitor. Anyway, we're creating partnerships among all the different folks who engage and impact birth to 8 in North Carolina. And it's about really defining a common vision, shared measures of success, and coordinated strategies that support children's optimal development beginning at birth. So that is the heart of what Pathways is about. And it's focused on a shared goal. And again, the goal has really been also the product of some very, very careful thought about what made sense to align around. So the common goal is all North Carolina children, regardless of race, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status, are reading on grade level by the end of third grade so that they have the greatest opportunity for life success. The next slide that I want to share is, what does that mean? When we talk about third grade literacy, we're really talking about something much more in-depth, whole child, birth to 8. So when we say it's achievable, and it absolutely is, it's with policies and practices that reflect reading as a cumulative process developed at birth and rooted in early brain development. All of the Pathways work, and you'll see, including the learning teams, are focused on this whole child approach and 3 specific goals: health and development on track starting at birth, supported and supportive families, and high quality birth to 8 learning and education. So these are really what we focus on in both the measures and where we're moving forward in the learning teams. We know that for children to be reading at grade level by the end of third grade, we need to be paying attention to all aspects of their development. This slide provides an overview of how we have gotten to today, where we are now with the Pathways work. It's very exciting to share that we now have shared measures of success. And again, we'll talk about that more in a moment. And as I said before, this has been a very intentional and thoughtful process. And our goal has really been to engage as many different types of people across broad sectors and disciplines to make sure that we are, in fact, addressing whole child development. So what you see on this timeline here is how have we gotten to today. So you can see we launched in November. We had 85 people, state-level folks mostly, who came together from government agencies and nonprofit organizations and foundations and business, and a couple of members of the General Assembly, who started with the question of, is there an appetite for a common agenda and common measures? And if there is, what would it take for that to be credible and something that you felt like you could embrace? And it was very exciting to hear that absolutely there was an appetite for that. And we, as those of you who were engaged, know there was significant input as to what that needed to look like, which prompted the launch of a data action team. And I won't go through all the members that are on the team. You can look at that on our website. But suffice it to say, it was a very impressive group of folks with incredible expertise and experience from across the state that spent considerable time looking at research, engaging stakeholders, and to provide feedback, as you can see on this timeline. Every phase of the data action team work involved an engagement strategy to help inform the final measures. And then, of course, we met in May, where, again, there were more than 80 folks who came together and provided significant input into the final draft of the measures. And as you will have seen if you've had a chance to look at them, the final set reflect that input from that May meeting. So it's very exciting to have a product that is very much the culmination of many people's expertise, and also really met some pretty specific criteria as folks were developing those measures. And I think it's important to keep these in mind, because what you'll see when we look at the framework is that it certainly doesn't capture everything that moves the needle on grade level reading, nor does it necessarily include everything that would move the needle on individual outcomes. What it captures is the best framework based on these criteria and North Carolina's context that, if we address these, would significantly improve outcomes for young children. So the criteria that stakeholders in the data action team held up and used in developing the measures were that they were research-based, actionable, impactful, easily communicated, and equalizing. So we will have similar criteria as we continue on through the project, depending on the decisions that need to be made. And just to provide an overview again of what the framework looks like when you have time to review it, is that each piece has and hopefully you can see my pointer up here, the goal area at the top, a level of an outcome within that goal area. There are 3 for this one, as measured by, meaning what if we saw movement on these things, it would indicate, based on the research and all of those other criteria, that we were likely moving the needle in achieving these outcomes. And then a section of what influences those as measured by, again, based on input and research and all the criteria. We also, the data action team and others, clearly wanted to recognize that there were broader societal conditions that also impacted every goal area. And those included equity, economic security, and social emotional health. There's significant research on these and their broad impact on children's development. So you'll see those at the bottom of each one. Again, remember, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in the questions box. Or, does that mean somebody's, no, hold on, I'm looking. Okay, or raise your hand, whichever one works best for you. So just to briefly touch on these, again, they're on the website, and as we move through the learning team work and process, hopefully you will participate in that. You'll become very familiar with each of these frameworks. But there's one, again, for health and development on track. I'm not going to go through that here, but just want you to have a sense of what is included in that. One on supported and supportive families and communities. And again, this includes 4 outcomes that are then happy as measured by and as influenced by, and then the high quality birth to 8 early learning and education. So together, these 3 frameworks make up the total framework for moving the needle on grade level reading and our high level result. What's most exciting is during the May, well, I say most exciting, but I think we have several exciting things to share. But is during the May meeting, we asked the question at the end, do you feel confident that if the state made progress on these measures, we would improve 3rd grade reading outcomes? This was a question that was part of the evaluation. And as you can see, it was overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. 2 people left it blank, and that we'll infer that it's still some thought to be given there, but that overwhelmingly people felt that if we really could make some progress here, we would be doing a great deal for the young children in our state. Also exciting is that the data action team and stakeholder work has been formally recognized by the North Carolina General Assembly in the session that just wrapped up with the budget. As you know, there's the budget and then the special provisions that provide more guidance around the spending of dollars and usage. There is a recommendation around collaboration around birth to 8. And specifically in talking about that collaboration and creating a shared vision and a comprehensive set of data indicators, the NC Pathways to Grade Level Reading Initiative is specified as being what should be considered to move forward with around alignment. So that's very exciting that work has been recognized formally by the state. Okay. So that is the basic overview of pathways, just to kind of get us on the same page. Again, we're happy to answer more questions about that, and there's an abundance of information on our website, which we'll share the link with in just a bit. The role of the learning teams. What is it, and why are we launching learning teams? Well, Now that we have shared measures, we really need to better understand the stories behind North Carolina's data for each measure. What is it? Where are we on those measures? What is working? What isn't working? We need to, before we can make decisions about what our strategies are, and in fact, about what we might prioritize moving forward, we first need to know what is the lay of the land now. And hopefully that's where you come in. I want to commend and point and give huge thanks to NC Child, as they are really providing and supporting all of the data for the learning team's work. And through they are the, as I'm sure all of you know, the Kids Count agency. And so we are incredibly lucky to have their expertise and support as we move forward in having the data to look at and discuss. If you've had a chance to review the learning team sort of member characteristics, then you've seen a couple of these, but I just want to highlight it's really about having a commitment to being data and research driven, and having that lens to look at literacy through a multidimensional systems lens. Understanding that when we're using literacy, we're really talking about, again, whole child development in health and family, as well as early learning experiences. Another key part, and you'll see this in the context and setup of the learning team meetings, is a commitment to acknowledging and eliminating systemic inequities in racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic disparities in early childhood experiences. We will be doing a great deal of disaggregation of the data to really understand where the disparities are and where we need to focus our attention. Excuse me. And another key point that I'll just, or 2 key points I'll highlight, is an eagerness to think outside of the box about what the state currently does, and a willingness to imagine possibilities, as well as a commitment to action. We are definitely about not just doing all this great thinking, which has happened, but what is it we will act upon. Now, I mentioned we had an awesome data action team. I want to also emphasize that when I look at this awesome team of co-chairs for the learning team, I'm just amazed and grateful of the folks who said yes, that they would be happy to participate and participate in a leadership role in each of the learning teams moving forward. So a huge shout out for the health and development team. We have Jennifer Zuckerman from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina Foundation, Megan Shanahan from the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health. For supported and supportive families and communities, we have Amy Hahn Nelson from UNC Charlotte Urban Institute and Tamika Williams from the Duke Endowment. And then for high quality birth to 8 education, we have Terry Stoops from the John Locke Foundation and Kari Garvin, who is now overseeing the Great Expectations work funded through KBR. So that is pretty much an all-star team. And you will, if that doesn't encourage you to participate, I don't know what will. So what is it that the learning teams will actually do? Here are the overall high-level responsibilities that will encompass the work of the learning teams. So it's about reviewing, providing critical review of the data, so looking at trends, looking at inequities, and identifying patterns. Talking about data and knowledge gaps, a lot of that information has I think, been identified through the data action team, but it also may be that as we're doing this work, learning teams indicate other areas that they want to make sure attention is paid to. And then providing some recommendations to guide the strategy design. In particular, when we will regroup the larger stakeholders likely in February to make some critical decisions. And one of those decisions is, do we move forward in terms of design with this framework as a whole, or do the learning teams recommend, based on what they've learned from the data, that there are some key areas that would be most that would be the best place to start. And so that will be one of the decisions to be made, and the learning teams will be providing recommendations and key insights to that decision. What I'm going to do next is just spend a little bit of time on what we mean by some of these areas of responsibility and show a piece of data that might come up, for example, during those discussions. Okay, so providing critical review of the data and looking at trends to consider while designing strategies. So things that might be considered are there areas, what areas have the greatest improvement in your particular goal area? What haven't moved much at all? Has there been a decline somewhere? What areas might have the greatest need for improvement? So really looking across what we will be fortunate again to have due to the great support we have from NC Child is we'll have trend data to be able to look from, I think, about 5 years out and current and get a sense of where we are. And so what I'm going to do next is provide an example. If you were to look at low birth weight, which is one of the measures on the framework, this is what you would see. So low birth weight is defined as babies weighing less than 2,500 grams. There's significant research about the academic and development outcomes for children born of low birth weight. And we can see here that in North Carolina in 2008, our state low birth weight was 9.1%, and in 2014, it was 8.9%. And again, the national average was 8%. So I'll take a moment to ask you all, and you can type in the question box, what do you notice about this, and what might it suggest to you? So someone said it depends on the standard deviation, but potentially stagnant. I think that's probably a good assessment based on what is seen here. So I'm going to go on to the next slide and then share another data point and ask a similar question. So right now, it pretty much looks like it could be stagnant. So now we're going to look at inequities to consider. That will be another piece of the work that the learning teams will look at. So which groups of families and children may be falling the most behind? Which groups of children and families seem stagnant according to indicators? Are there areas that need more improvement or are improving the most? And what does that mean for our work moving forward? So this is the same data for 2014, disaggregated by race and ethnicity. So you can see down here at this end, this is somewhere close to 13%. And the lowest is somewhere around a little under 7%. So now that you see it disaggregated, is there a different story that the data tells? And again, I'll pause a moment just to give folks to reflect and write in the questions box. All right, it looks like nobody wants to take the leap. Oh no, I'm wrong. Let's see. So it raises a question. Yes, somebody wrote, what explains the low percentage for Latinos? Someone also noted equity lacking between lowest Hispanic and highest African American. Yes, and it's important to understand why the rates are different in order to create equity. So these are exactly the kinds of questions that the data action team will be looking at for all of the measures. I'm sorry, the learning teams. I said data action teams. I meant learning teams. Here's another example, though, of looking at the data a bit differently. When we look at counties, surprisingly, perhaps, these counties that are fairly close to each other represent the highest at 17.1% and the lowest at 4.1%. And again, these will be questions that we will look at. What does it mean geographically? What might be driving some of that, some of those outcomes? And what does that mean when we design strategies? Is it going to be that we need to focus on everything, or will we see the greatest impact by focusing on specific places or people, or whatever the case may be? This learning teamwork is going to have to provide and will provide some real important information to guide the decisions that folks will be making down the road. So other parts of the learning team work include also identifying trends to consider, which we talked about, but there'll be a lot of conversation about what is causing these results in North Carolina and what it means for the initiative, as well as patterns across indicators. And I don't have an example here because we just have one indicator, but one of the activities that we did and that we'll spend a little time thinking about with the learning teams is that many of these indicators are connected not only within their own goal area, but across goal areas. And it's important to keep that in mind as we think about, particularly as we move to the next phase of designing strategies, but also in how we think about what the story is telling us from the data we have. As I mentioned, we will do a little work identifying data and knowledge gaps. Most of that has, again, been done through the data action team work, but we'll be sharing that because it could be that there are sources of data that we just aren't familiar with that you all know and would be willing to share. So we'll spend a short amount of time on that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, informing design decisions. What critical patterns emerge that should be leveraged or addressed? Which indicators seem particularly important to highlight and emphasize? And are there additional questions that we need to explore moving forward based on what we uncover? So that is a high-level overview of the core work of the learning teams. Moving to the next slide, given what you've heard, and we'll have more time for questions as well, but happy to take them now. But given what you've heard and the purpose of the teams, are there key stakeholders that should be part of each of the teams, of the health and development, of supported and supportive families and communities, and high quality birth to aid? I would ask that you send suggestions to Mandy by August 1st. We will personally reach out to anyone that you recommend. Our goal is to really ensure we have good representation in looking at the data here so that we can be as informed as possible as we move forward. I want to touch on some of the supports that will be available to data action team. Learning team. I'm going to have to practice that. Learning teams as we move forward. Each learning team meeting we will provide facilitation for someone from the Pathways planning team will provide facilitation. As I mentioned, there will be data support. We will be using an online management tool called Basecamp, which I will share more with you in a moment. There will be tools and templates to support your work, and you saw that there are incredible co-chairs for each of those teams. So just to briefly touch on this, Basecamp is an online group and project management tool. It is now in its third iteration, and I have to say, having used it in previous iterations, at times it was more confusing. This third iteration, I think they've done an excellent job in providing a very useful tool to help folks manage not only documents, but schedules and work that needs to be done that may need to be done between meetings. So it'll serve as an online repository for documents. You can see here in the documents and files that everything will be accessible there. Tools and agendas, there will be schedules. There are email options if we choose to use them, and calendar options, but it'll allow us to make sure that everyone feels that they can stay up to date and on the same page and access all the resources that might be needed for learning team discussion. If you decide that you want to participate in a learning team, and I hope that you will receive an invitation via email to sign up for the Basecamp team, the Basecamp site that will support your team. And there will be support from Abby Wattenberg, who's with Michigan State University. As some of you know, we've been working with Penny Foster Fishman and helping the design for the work that is guiding pathways, and they have graciously offered to host and support the Basecamp work. And there are also a couple of videos that I would encourage folks to watch just because they are it'll help as you navigate the system. And I think they're all pretty short. So here is an overview of the team meeting process. As you can see, there will be one meeting per month from September through December. And the high-level goals for each meeting are listed here. So in September, it'll really be, you'll get familiar with the folks on the team with you, starting to identify and understand data trends. In October, we will look more in depth at inequities. In November, we'll spend time looking at patterns. And in December, we will spend time a little bit on the data and knowledge, but really around recommendations. And at the December meeting, rather than meeting individually as individual learning teams, we will actually bring all three learning teams together. Because one of the things that we found in doing the work, even through the data action team work, is that it's really important to have some time to look across goal areas, as that will really drive strategy as we move forward, because different areas certainly have impact on others. So how does this all fit into the overall process for pathways? Well, so as you know, and we've touched on, we've completed the process of identifying shared measures. Now it's time to make sense of the data, and that's through this learning team work. We will then reconvene for a critical decision point, and that's using the information from the learning teams to determine if we take on the framework as a whole or pick select outcomes as a starting point. And then we'll really spend some time understanding root causes and building and implementing action plans. So that's a high-level process overview. I want to take a moment to pause and give folks time to ask questions. So again, you can do that through the question box, which is definitely, those pop up right away, or you can do that if you would prefer for me to unmute you. So just I'll pause for a moment to see if there are questions.
While you guys think about questions, this is Mandy. I just wanted to add one thing. We've been using the word data a lot during this webinar, and that is the central part of the learning team process, but we want to be clear that we need lots of different kinds of people on the learning teams. We will have some folks there who are steeped in the data, who are very comfortable with it. We also want to have folks who are content experts and who are policy experts, who think about the political aspects of things. We really need to have all those kinds of minds around the table for the learning team process. So if you're not a hardcore data person, don't think that the learning teams are not for you.
And we also are doing, just to add on to that, it's an excellent point. We're working to make sure we have parent representatives and folks who are impacted, who work with children and are with children every day. All right, so time commitment per month about. So we're anticipating each meeting will be approximately 3 hours. So that's 3 hours per month. And there will likely be I don't know, some amount of time of communication or looking at things in between meetings, but I don't anticipate that being a tremendous amount of time. Probably another 3 hours worth of time at most, I would think. Do we have an ideal number of members for each learning team? It's an excellent question. So I'm going to give you a roundabout answer, however. Obviously, it would be, we don't want them to get too unwieldy. At the same time, we do firmly believe that we will get to the best results by having a diverse set of perspectives in the room. And so that's more important than picking a set number of folks. Oh, let's see. How much access to the raw and aggregate data will we have on each learning team? That's a great question, and I think it's one we'll need to also address with NC Child folks. But Mandy, do you have?
I think that's still being worked out. There will be a spreadsheet format that will give you kind of more of the already somewhat analyzed, synthesized for you, but more of the raw data. And then there will be kind of more user-friendly formatting of some data too for people who aren't, working with that data every day.
I would also imagine if somebody wanted to see the raw data because that's how they think, it would be accessible because it's being pooled. Will meetings be in Raleigh? Most likely they will be in Raleigh. Also, I know that, it's something we've been thinking about as we move forward. At this point, it's still the most cost effective where folks are driving distance from, because it feels center of the state. They may be in RTP or that area, but probably central North Carolina. Let's see. So someone wanted to know where in the process is a critical look at the resources already in place to accomplish this, and the end goal or resources that would be needed. That is an excellent question, and the next phase of this work. So first, we're going to look at the data to see what is it we're seeing, and then we're clearly going to need to be looking at what is in place and what isn't. I want to also share that simultaneously, through our great partner Best NC, they have engaged the Institute for Child Success to also be doing some of that research for the initiative, so that it will be available for the next phase, which will be design teams to use and review as they do their work. Someone asked about the current team composition. So at this point, there are people that have indicated interest because they participated when we asked at the stakeholder meetings and through email outreach we've put out. We don't have final lists or of compositions. This is really the orientation that will hopefully convince many of you that yes, you want to participate. We will, however, I do want to say, look at the teams and feel that if there's a critical perspective missing, we will do significant outreach to recruit that perspective to participate. So I think someone else asked about time commitment. I think we addressed that. Is it reasonable for an organization to have 2 people who tag team at meetings? Right. So ideally, I think it would be best for group process to have one person assigned to come to meetings. But we obviously want group, various organizations' perspectives. So we'll be willing to work with folks to see how we can best make that work so that we're hearing your contributions and that the learning team itself feels cohesive and is able to work together. If you signed up for a team at the meeting, does that mean I'm on the team? So actually, no. I'm going to let Mandy address that, and there will be another slide that gets to that. But Mandy, go ahead.
So 1 hour after the webinar is over, everyone who attended and everyone who was not able to attend but signed up will receive an email with instructions. And what that's going to be is a 2-question SurveyMonkey survey. So even if you have told us you want to participate, please click on that survey link, click which learning team you want to participate in, and reply to that survey, because that is the trigger that will send you an email that gives you the dates and the times for the learning team. So even if you've told us you want to participate, please do respond to that SurveyMonkey survey.
Oh, and thank you to Layla, who wants to reassure that all data files can be available for folks who want them. So back to that previous question. Will there be community capacity data for families and community learning teams? Also an excellent question. So in addition to this learning team work, we will, to guide decisions, we will also be doing regional community meetings to gather input from communities around what helps, what they see in their community around the measures, and what is guiding some of the local outcomes. Also, the Smart Start community and our partnership with the NC Partnership for Children are also engaging communities in using the measures to assess community needs. Has this type of process taken place in the past statewide? If so, can we learn from past work? So I would say that one of the significant accomplishments of North Carolina is in our early learning space is that I think there have been, in different ways, for the past several decades, folks coming together to figure out how to advance our birth to 8 work. And that's why we've had the significant accomplishments that we have. So we are just another dot on the timeline of coming together at the opportune time to do that. So I think we can certainly learn lessons. People came together in different ways. And the other piece I would acknowledge readily is that some of the work we're doing at the state level, when you look across the country, is typically done at the community level. And we're trying to look at it from a different perspective from the state level, because we know how much state level policy impacts communities' abilities to accomplish what they want. And so from both the Pathways perspective and the North Carolina Early Childhood Foundation work, we really seek to work from both communities and pushing that up, and state policy to making it more possible for communities to do what they need to do. Hot coffee will be provided. I love that question. So if you're like me, yes, you must have coffee. Do you have a suggestion about which learning team we should choose to participate on? Does it make sense to participate on a team where we feel we have the most expertise or interest? Absolutely. I think that the work will benefit from the expertise and experience of those in the room who can, and I understand there may be interest in other areas for lots of other reasons. There will be plenty of opportunity, I think, to learn across learning team areas, but it probably makes the most sense to participate in one where you feel like you can offer the greatest expertise, experience, and perspective. Are people able to participate on more than one learning team? Absolutely. We welcome anyone to participate who's willing to do that. A couple people asked that. That's impressive. Okay, I think I hit all the questions. If I missed one, please feel free to also email either Mandy or me, and we'll happily address them. So the big question then that we have for you is, are you in? Are you ready to take the dive? We mentioned each learning team meets 4 times. Mandy told you about the survey that you will receive shortly after this webinar. And then you'll receive an email listing dates and times. And then the other point I want to emphasize is, what can you do now? So this is a question that came up at the stakeholder meeting. Given what your organization may focus on and what opportunities you may see in the state at the moment, there are lots of ways to make commitments to advancing this work. We will be sharing publicly shortly all the pledges that were made at the May stakeholder meeting, and they range from aligning our grant funding outcomes to pathways to sharing this with my board. So there are lots of ways to think about that, and we would encourage you to do that. And finally, we just would like you to join us. So we're excited about this work moving forward and the incredible contributions from so many people that have already helped significantly shape it. Every piece of information and material I think that has been shared through this process since it launched in November is available online at this website, buildthefoundation.org/pathways. So we have tried to make it easy for people to follow along or go back and reference anything that may have been shared. And with that, we'll wrap it up. I'm happy to stay on for a moment and see if there are any final questions. But I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to participate, and encourage you to sign up and join a learning team as we move this work forward. Thank you.